The ancient Essenes perhaps identified best the role of our personal relationships and categorized them. They went so far as to actually categorize 7 mysteries of relationship that we would live, each individual through the course of their lives would live simply by living life in the presence of one another. They have categorized these as mirrors, and what they remind us of is that in each moment of our life, the reality that we have become within is mirrored to us. It is a reflected reality. It is mirrored to us by the actions and the choices and the language of those around us. The first mirror of those relationships is a mirror of our presence in the moment. It's the mystery of the first mirror, what it is that we reflect to those around us in the moment. When we find ourselves surrounded by individuals and patterns of relationship and behavior with a dominant aspect of anger or rage or fear perhaps, and the mirror works both ways. It could just as easily be joy and ecstasy and happiness in our lives. If the first mirror is at play, what we're seeing is a mirror of that which we are in the moment, that's which we are radiating to those individuals around us as they mirror or shine back to us that which has been offered, the mirror of that which we are in the moment. The second mirror of relationship is of a similar quality, although it's a little more subtle. Rather than mirroring to us what we are in the moment, the second mirror mirrors to us that which we judge in the moment. If you should find yourself surrounded by individuals who demonstrate patterns of behavior that perhaps frustrate you, push your buttons of anger or rage, and you sense that those are not your patterns, they're not you in the moment, you ask yourself, are they showing me in this moment? And you say honestly to yourself, no, then there's a good possibility they may be showing you that which you judge in the moment, the anger and the rage or the joy that you are judging in that moment. When you find many different people demonstrating the same patterns to you, many different people demonstrating their anger or their rage to you. Have you ever been angry and been in a big hurry to get somewhere and gotten into your car to drive to wherever it was you were going and found that everywhere you went, you made the wrong choices? You made the wrong choice in the teller line at the bank. You chose the slow line. You made the wrong choice on the exit ramp on the freeway. And everywhere when you're driving down the road, you're seeing people that are pulling out in front of you and then doing about 30 miles an hour in a 55. They may be mirroring to you what you are in that moment. We're going to talk about a reflected reality in just a few moments, a reflected reality. Often, the mystery of the first mirror is precisely what's happening. Often we will find people in our presence who are mirroring to us that which we are in the moment, and often that's not the case. And then people say, well, the mirrors don't work. Well, they do work if we have the wisdom to recognize what it is they're saying. A few years ago, I had the opportunity, a rare opportunity, have 3 people come into my life in the same month. Now, that should have been my clue right there. When 3 brand new relationships, very different in nature, all occur within the same month, that's the flag that says something's going to happen here. You better believe it. One of them was potentially a romantic relationship. One of them was potentially a business relationship. One was a mix between a business, a relationship, and a friendship. Each of them came into my life. Each of them came to me. And that's to have been the second clue. Each of them found me. The romantic relationship, it was with someone who I had worked with. We had spent a lot of time together. We had a lot of common interests, and it was one of those things where it just kind of made sense to be together. It wasn't like there wasn't a powerful magnetic attraction. It was more, it just seemed like the thing to do. The business relationship was especially interesting for me. I was very busy doing seminars, more than full-time. It's like we are now. And there was a gentleman that came to me and offered to do the logistics and to set these seminars up, allowing me, freeing me up to do the things that I was choosing to do more of, and allowing him to do the things that he did best. Sounded like a good plan for me to do that. And the friendship and kind of quasi-business relationship. There was a gentleman, a very talented, very skilled carpenter, who asked if he could house sit on my property in northern New Mexico while I was leading a group to Egypt in the late fall. And I had been looking for someone to stay on the property, and it looked like also a good thing to do. He said that he would like to stay at that property in exchange for his carpentry and caretake. And so all of these happened right about the same time. It was a very, very busy time in my life. And I said, okay, sure. Well, within that month, within the same month that each of those three people came into my life, each of them just about began to make me crazy. They were just driving me right up the wall. And there's a pattern that I had demonstrated throughout much of my life. When things were making me crazy, we call it crazy making, when things were doing that for me, I would use logic. And through my logic, I'd say, oh, Greg, you're just tired. You know, you've been on the road a lot. You know, you're under a lot of pressure right now. Let's see how it is in another week or so, or see how it is in a couple of weeks. And I would go away. I did this with these people, and I'd go away on the trip, and then I'd come back in a week or 10 days, and everything was the same, and I did this again and again. Well, there's a routine that I would do at that time in my life. When I would travel on a trip like this, I would come back through the Albuquerque airport. I'd stop at the ATM, pull out some cash, pull my animals out of the vet, get the car out of parking, fill up the car, and drive approximately 4 hours to our home in northern New Mexico. And on this one particular trip, I came home and I began that routine, and I didn't get very far with it. Because I went to the ATM at 5 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon in the Albuquerque airport, and the ATM machine told me there was nothing in that account. And I knew that it was a mistake. I knew that the account was full because I'd just been approved for a construction loan. It was a business construction loan on my property in northern New Mexico, and that there was plenty of money there, and I would check it Monday morning. So I drove home, and Monday morning, sure enough, I got up and I called the bank, and they said, well, there's no mistake, Mr. Braden. Not only is there no money in this account, you are overdrawn by 71 checks, and there's a $30 service charge in each of those checks. When can you come in and talk to us? I said, well, I'll be right there.
One of those checks was to me.
And one of those checks was to my dear friend, Jeff Volk, and that's how we met. So now Jeff gets the story. Because Jeff had trusted me and sent me a video. I'm sorry, Jeff. So I did. I went to the bank and I said, well, what's happening? They said, well, there was a wire withdrawal from your account. It was not authorized. It was not authorized by me, and they believed that it was. And every penny in that account had been taken, and all the checks had already been written outstanding were now coming back against that account. And when something like that happens, there's really no way to rationalize anything else. You can't do anything else. So I didn't even have enough money to put gas in my car and get my animals out of the vet. There was absolutely nothing that was there, and I had to go home and look at this. I said, wow, something big is happening here. Well, at the same time, I had just completed a tour, a series of workshops along the Pacific Northwest for about 30 days. And the people who had offered to set these programs up for me had many reasons why the money from those programs wouldn't come through. They said, well, our accounting isn't done, or we haven't reconciled our accounts, or whatever. Something was happening. And at the same time, the gentleman who was living on my property in exchange for the carpentry, and this is really very delicate for me, and I have to be really careful. I guess the best way to identify this is that he'd chosen a lifestyle that not only was what our property was not about, it was illegal in the eyes of the state of New Mexico at that time,
And I was asking him to change his lifestyle. Was that delicate? That was good. So all these things were happening at the same time. And I said, if the mirrors hold true, obviously there are some mirrors that are happening to me. What are these mirrors saying to me? Well, I went for a walk. I couldn't do much else. I had to go for a walk that day. There's a beautiful road that goes about 4 miles from our home down to the Rio Grande Gorge, a beautiful wildlife sanctuary. I went for a walk down the road that day, and I asked myself this question. I said, if these mirrors hold true, then there's a mirror that's happening here. What are these people showing to me? And I knew that I had to find a common thread. So I began looking at what each of these relationships was demonstrating. And I went through all kinds of possibilities. And when it was all said and done, what I knew that in each relationship, I knew that there were issues of honesty, integrity, and trust were the three that were really the most outstanding for me. And so I said to myself, if this mirror holds true, if people that are around me are demonstrating these patterns of behavior, are they showing me that I somehow am lacking in honesty, as Jeff may have thought, or integrity, or trust? Is that what they're showing me? And this feeling welled up inside of me before I even got that sentence out of my head and said, no, that's what this work is all about. That's precisely what this work is all about. And at the same time, there was a realization. It was such a powerful, it was subtle and powerful, that came to me, and I realized that they were not showing me a mirror of what I was in the moment, as we'd always been conditioned, as I'd been conditioned to believe. Rather, they were showing me a more subtle mirror, the mirror of what I judged in that moment. The mirror of what I judged in that moment. And that's precisely what was happening. I had a tremendous charge on honesty and integrity and trust. Such a charge that I was not willing to allow it in others. I was not willing to allow that in others. When you have a charge on something, what does that promise? It promises that you'll see it. You'll see it in your life if you've got a charge on it. I had that charge. These three people that came into my life, now I know that each of them was a powerful, skillful master that impeccably held the mirror to me during that time in my life of my greatest charges. And it was relatively concise the way they did that. It could have drawn out over years, and maybe it did. Maybe those mirrors have been shown to me year after year on such subtle levels that I never recognized them. And they became less subtle and less subtle and less subtle until something happened that I could not look away from. And in that moment, I had that mirror. In that moment, I was shown the second Essene mystery of relationship, the mirror of that which we judge in the moment. The gentleman that had invited me to work with him wanted to set up these seminars. The very first moment we met, something interesting happened. We met in the home of a mutual friend in Northern California, and the first moment we met, I'd never seen him before, I'd spoken with him on the phone, and our eyes met on the landing of this house, and I said something to him that I seldom, or rarely, will ask anyone upon first meeting him, and I simply said, "When's your birthday?" And he said, "Well, my birthday is June 28th, 1954. And I said, "Wow, that's my birthday. The exact month, the exact day, and the exact year." I'm a Cancerian. If you know much about Cancerians, you know that Cancerians live in a world of feeling. Maybe that's why we're exploring feelings this weekend. And I'm a double Cancerian, which means double feeling. And depending on how you run the charts, I've got 5 or 6 planets in the 12th house that are all in Cancer. So my world is a very feeling world. My path has been to reconcile that feeling world with the academics and the hard sciences through the corporate and the academic world. And I looked at him and I said, "Well, you must have had the same experiences then." Another Cancerian male. What a great person to share this business with. And he said something to me in that moment. He looked me directly in the eyes and he said something to me and I discounted it. I used my logic. And what he said to me was, "Ha, I'm your evil twin." And he told me in that moment, and I discounted it. Because my logic said, oh, well, he's just making a joke. Although I had a feeling in here. The moment the gentleman moved onto my property to caretake for me in exchange for him living there, I had a feeling about him being there, and I discounted that feeling through my logic. I said, oh, Greg, you don't really even know that man. Well, that's precisely the point. You don't even know him. Why would you judge him? The moment that I began spending serious time with the potentially romantic relationship in my life, I had a feeling. And my logic said, oh, that's the feeling that you had from the last time you got hurt. So let's give this one a chance. And the reason I'm sharing this with you now is because in each of these there was a feeling that told me right up front. And there was more than one lesson that happened here, and I've shared this with other people, and it's been a powerful trigger for them. It's a lesson I didn't care for at the time. The week that I recognized the pattern of judgment, the week that I recognized that each of these people was masterfully mirroring for me the things that I judged in life, every other relationship that was held in place by judgment began to disappear. There's a cascading effect, and I share this with you now because I know that it works this way. If you are experiencing a pattern in one place in your life, it'll show up in other places in your life, and once it is healed, once it's reconciled in one place, it is healed everywhere simultaneously because we are holographic in nature. Our consciousness works that way. It is mirrored on many, many different levels. Well, the gentleman who had offered to do the business with me, that relationship didn't work well at all, and I felt like I gave it ample opportunity, and the reality is it did work well, and I just didn't know what it was showing me. It worked perfectly as my mirror. So one day I called this gentleman and I said, I'm not going to work with you any longer. And I hung up the phone. There's more to it than that. I'm making the long story short. I hung up the phone, and as I did, I realized that every program and every source of income that I had for the next 6 months, I had just canceled. As my hand was on the phone, that was on a Saturday afternoon. So I had the rest of Saturday and all of Sunday to think about it. Sunday night, there was a message on my voice machine from a woman I had never met before, who through mutual friends had heard about these workshops, and she asked me to call her, and I did. And she said, I'm interested in sponsoring you and setting up programs for you around the country. Would you be interested in working with me? And the first thing I asked her, I said, well, when's your birthday? She said, June 28th, 1954. True story. And my first reaction was to hang up the phone, and I didn't do it. And I shared with her, I said, let me tell you a story. And I shared with her this story, and she said, well, would you be willing to give this a chance? This time, I paid attention to the way that I felt, and it felt different. Something was different. And I said, yes, I'd like to do this with you. If you know her, now she's a seminar coordinator and does workshops in her own right, and now an author of a couple of different books. Her name is Joanne Carl Cornog, if you've ever done any work with Joanne Cornog. And because I did not allow the first relationship to taint the second, because I was able to trust the feeling and really know what the feeling was saying, we've had a very powerful relationship, and it was through her that I met Melissa. So it's interesting how these things work out. Through that mirror, that second mirror of judgment, I was shown the things that I have the greatest charges on in my life. I was shown the mirror of that which I judge in the moment rather than that which I was in the moment. And I learned the powerful lesson of discernment, of trust. And it was a relatively inexpensive lesson compared to what came next, because immediately after that I began dealing with publishers and contracts and things like that. And through my powers of discernment, I averted what could have been some serious problems in that way. So I'll invite you, look in your life at the people that you hold most dear, because that's the magnet. That's the magnet. It may be love, it may be that they're family and you don't have any choice. The people that you hold most dear, And then look at the characteristics that they exhibit that just push your buttons right and left. And ask yourself this question: are they showing me in the moment? And if you honestly say the answer to that is no, then ask yourself the question: are they showing me that which I judge in the moment? And you may be surprised at what you find.
The third scene mirror of relationship is perhaps one of the most commonly recognized mirrors. This is the mirror that we sense every time we find ourselves in the presence of another individual and we look into their eyes. And in that moment, this magic happens. This electrical charge tingles through our body. Perhaps the hair on the back of our neck and our arms stands up in the presence of this person whom we may not even know. What has just happened in that moment? Well, through the wisdom of this mirror, we're asked to allow for the possibility that through the course of our lives, in our innocence, to survive life's offering, that we give away huge portions of ourselves in the experience of life itself. That through the course of our lives, pieces of ourselves may be lost unknowingly, or perhaps given away knowingly, or taken from us by those who have power over us. When we find ourselves in the presence of another individual who embodies the very things that we have lost and that we are seeking to find that wholeness in ourselves, our bodies physiologically may respond to that. And we'll know that as a magnetic attraction to this individual. Should you find yourself in the presence of another, and for some unexplainable reason drawn to share time with this individual, ask yourself this question: what is it that I see in this person that I've lost, that I've given away, or that was taken from me? And you may be very surprised at what comes back to you, as the reality occurs that within nearly every individual who you will ever encounter, you will recognize this familiarity. You will sense this piece of yourself because we see it in one another throughout our lives. The third mystery of relationship.